So, we recently just had a Bryan Kohberger court hearing. Okay, he was back in court, and this subject, was trying to get the grand jury indictment thrown out. They want to overturn that indictment. They didn't feel it was just. Their argument was interesting, okay? And it was all about how the grand jury was misled. They are not supposed to find just probable cause. They're actually supposed to be held to a higher standard of without a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
So that's not the standard anywhere in the country. But it begs to question whether grand juries are really doing their job. I started looking into grand juries because I was like, I don't know if the grand jury process is a good thing. Like, I honestly wonder if it should not just be gotten rid of.
Yeah.
Now I've changed my mind. I don't think it should be gotten rid of. I do think there is a place for it. But I believe the original intention of grand juries, and because it was meant to be for the public, like it was meant to protect us. It was not meant to be a weapon. It is a weapon used by the prosecutor now, which is messed up because originally it was supposed to protect us from a tyrannical justice system.
Wow.
That was the purpose that was written into the Constitution, is to protect us. And it is not being used that way anymore. So I looked into that, and I'm going to get into that. But first I want to talk about, we are going to have cameras in the courtroom. Judge Gold decided that.
Judge.
Judge. Oh, my gosh.
Yep.
Still thinking Delphi over here. Judge. But we're going to have cameras, and
I haven't put a decision out yet, but what I'm going to do is take control of the cameras in the courtroom. I'm not going to ban cameras in the courtroom, but I need to have more control over what the cameras are doing and what media or people who are not media are doing with the filming. I know I can only control so much, and that's why I continue to urge people to be patient and have some dignity and some restraint. And some of that I've heard or seen has been disappointing.
By the way, I really enjoyed Andrea Burkhart's, live tweeting of the hearing, because as you guys know, we don't get to see the live footage. We can only watch it after when it's not live. Shout out to her. I really enjoy her, as like a lawyer who commentates on cases and stuff like that. So one interesting thing, I'm not going to go over all of this. You can go check out her videos and her Twitter where she live tweets. But one thing that I thought was interesting is she talks about how, here, I'll just read this one tweet. Logston, which is one of the attorneys on Bryan's defense team, argues purpose is to make state put on its A game to grand jury. Says that didn't happen here because 6 jurors wanted to hear more until they were told the standard was probable cause.
Whoa.
The court says the instruction follows the probable cause standard, and that's how Idaho does it has been doing this for over 100 years. So apparently it's written in the Idaho state constitution. It's phrased in a way that's kind of more generic, but it does seem to lean a little bit towards without a reasonable doubt. It actually kind of does, the way it's written, but it hasn't been used that way in like 100 years. It's been probable cause. It's a standard all over the nation, which I get. And, Judge was basically like, look, I'm not the Supreme Court. I can't make this decision. I can't change something like this.
Yeah.
This has been the standard. This is how we've operated. So this is like a bit above me. But, it was creative. I enjoyed your argument, but I have to deny it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the argument. I think it's really creative, and I appreciate the journey back through history. I think it is an important factor in determining what the law is and why the law was established the way it was. I get it. I mean, what it comes down to me is that I am constrained by what I believe is settled law in Idaho. I may be wrong, but this is certainly an issue that you would have to bring up with a higher court, like the Idaho Supreme Court. I think I've had 3 or 4 district judge decisions denying the motion and the argument. So I am going to deny that argument. I think the argument is good, but I can't go that far. Not today.
And I want to say, them trying to get the indictment overturned does not dismiss the charges against Bryan Kohberger.
Yeah, and that's so strange.
It can if Judge were to decide that.
Yeah.
But that would never happen.
We hear that like on every mainstream media, and even a lot of content creators think that if they get the grand jury thrown out, that the whole thing's done. That is not the case.
It would go back to a preliminary hearing, most likely.
Yeah.
Most likely.
That doesn't free him. They aren't going to be like, yeah, grand jury, here's the key, Kohberger, let yourself out. Yeah. That's not happening.
No, that would not happen whatsoever.
No.
But, so, I found that interesting. 6 jurors wanted more evidence, which we now know, after looking into grand juries a little bit, that they can interrogate witnesses. Like, they literally can go investigate this case.
They are supposed to be able to, yes.
Right.
But they weren't in this case.
No.
They were told no.
Right.
Which is insane.
It is.
Insane.
It's not right.
No.
It's not right.
No.
So, here I have a paper, which I will try to remember to link this in the description or remind Brendan to link it, but I'll cite what it's called. Grand Valley State University. It says Scholar Works at GVSU, exploring the criticisms of grand juries in the United States, written by Heather Gurink, Grand Valley State University. This is an honors project. And this is a paper that she wrote. She talks about the history of grand juries, but then she talks about the criticisms of grand juries. And it says prosecutorial dependence. One of the most common criticisms of grand juries is that they have become too dependent on prosecutors. They sit there and they're doing basically what you would do in a trial and just listen to the evidence passed to you by the prosecutor.
Yeah.
And see, here's the thing. The prosecutor is not supposed to be grandstanding.
No.
That is not at all what they're supposed to do in this case. They are not supposed to do anything based off of opinion. They are literally just supposed to, here's the evidence from the police. That is it.
Correct.
And
not
the grand
connecting
jury,
dots, not doing any of that.
No connecting dots,
right.
Nothing. They're supposed to say, here's the facts, here's the evidence we got from the investigators, and then the grand jury themselves are supposed to investigate. Mm-hmm. That is not what's happening.
No.
And then it is secret and kept from the defense, which it didn't used to be.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is messed up, in my opinion.
I agree with you. It shouldn't be this way.
Basically, okay, here's a good rundown on how it should be, okay? The prosecution is not supposed to be involved. Basically, they are just supposed to be...
They didn't used to be.
They're supposed to be the middleman handing over the discovery to the grand jury. Now, that grand jury, selected at random through jury duty, whatever, are supposed to essentially look through the caseload and or workload of the police and hold the police accountable. Now, remember, a lot of people hear the word accountable and think that it's a bad thing. No, you can hold someone accountable and they can have positive outcomes too. You are just essentially looking over what the police have done to see if you can come to the same conclusion that the police did with their own workload. That is it.
Yeah. So this paper goes on to say basically what's happening, okay, now, is they aren't looking at the evidence.
Weaponized it.
They are, yeah. The prosecutors have, the court system has weaponized it, okay? And the grand jurors are no longer looking at the evidence. They are literally just handing over the indictment that the prosecutor's asking for.
Right.
It's like, okay,
It's
let's call this
insane.
grand jury meeting, and the
So
prosecutor's
that we
like,
can get what we want.
yeah. That's exactly what's happening. And they're like, I want this indictment for these charges. And they're like, all right, yep, cool.
It's insane.
So-
I hope that I get called to one. I would love to come with my caseload like you do in the read and be like, let me tell you, you know?
So they're supposed to be a shield for us, is
Yeah.
what this alleges. Like,
They are
this,
a representative of the people.
right. Yep. So it says here that prosecutors, in theory, should remain neutral and give correct and unbiased legal advice to the jurors, but this is often not the reality. It also talks about how prosecutors used to not even really be a part of the grand jury process.
They shouldn't be.
No,
in my
I don't think they
opinion.
should be
Or if they are, the defense should always be there. It should never, ever, 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 ever be one-sided. And
I don't think it should be either.
I think there should be an opposing side there. It has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be. Otherwise, it is unfair, as we see in this situation. And again, we are not saying Kohberger is innocent. We are not saying he's guilty. We have people that watch us that believe he's innocent. We have people that watch us that believe he's guilty. We just fight for a fair justice system. That is my buy-in in this.
Yeah, so I wanted to read this part because I feel like this is a good basic. So originally these grand juries were created to protect the people from an oppressive government, creating what came to be known as the shield function, as well as being able to indict those who had committed crimes, which was thus named the sword function. Many fear that grand juries have begun to depend too much on the prosecution, meaning they have lost their shield function by no longer protecting the public from unfounded criminal claims. Some people think that it's beyond repair. Others think there are things we can do to fix it.
Sure.
Because this is it's problematic across the country, which is exactly what Bryan's defense was arguing.
Yeah.
Is that, like California's done away with it. Like, this is of times of old. The way it's being used is not the way it was ever intended.
It's not justice.
It's not justice. It's basically the grand jury's just there to give a rubber stamp so they don't have to go through the process of a preliminary hearing where the defense can contradict evidence, interrogate.
Which is insane.
Like, this is your job. This is what justice is this checks and balance system where you're both going through the evidence and you're proving your case. Like, to handicap the defense is pretty messed up, in my opinion, which is what has happened in Kohberger's case.
It is.
Whether he's innocent or guilty, I don't care. I care about the justice system being correct and fair.
Yeah.
And if it is not, then how are we ever to know for sure whether he is the guy? That's my problem. Is that I can never be sure if I feel like there's shadiness, because then I don't know if this guy, if investigators,
if we're convicting the criminal or
Yeah.
not. We have no idea.
Well, it could be something like the cops got tunnel vision, so all this evidence is slanted in this way, and because we can't look at any of the rest,
Yeah.
we don't know.
Exactly. And the thing is, too...
Or there could be more people involved.
Yeah, I always go back to the town square. When our justice system was created, it was essentially a a town square. It is the people judging the people, okay?
Yep.
That is democracy. That is what we are here to do, and our justice system is democracy. A judge isn't there to make their own biased decisions. The prosecution has a job, and that is to defend and or present the state's case, the police that have arrested this individual, and then you have the defense that is there to defend this individual based on what the defendant is saying, right? And when we look at the Bryan Kohberger case, we have a situation where you have the prosecution who's like, oh, hey, yeah, we're not going to give you all the evidence because I don't feel like we need to. And on top of that, we're going to convene a grand jury in secret, not let you know about it. So, hey, grand jury indictment, you know. And by the way, also to let you know, those grand jurors that were looking for more evidence because they didn't feel like they could make a decision, we told them no. Go ahead and answer. What?
Yeah.
What? What is wrong with Idaho?
I don't know, man.
Dude!
But I have another paper here talking about it too, which is from Cornell University. And it says the grand jury acts as an investigative arm of the government. It helps the prosecutor gather evidence by calling witnesses, issuing subpoenas to compel production of documents. When acting in its investigative capacity, the grand jury has been called a sword in the hands of the prosecution in the fight against crime. But it also is supposed to shield against ill-conceived or malicious prosecutions. Like, it is this double-edged sword, essentially, fighting for the people and also fighting against criminals for the government.
Yeah.
They're like the middle people, you know, our peers, you know, normal citizens who can look into these things and make sure everything's running okay. Which makes me wonder, should they not be lawyers? Should they not, or have some, you know what I mean? Should they?
I mean, technically, it
these are
sounds
average
like,
citizens that are doing investigative work. Like, I don't know how much I trust that.
No, I don't think it should be a lawyer. I don't think it should be anyone that's bought in to the legal system. I just don't, because they're going to have ties in that legal system, and the prosecutor might be a buddy-buddy, or the defense might be a buddy-buddy or something like that. I think that either A, the prosecution and the defense should be present to explain their case, and then they're taken away, and the grand jury should be able to look over all the evidence, literally every single piece. The only piece they shouldn't get is if it puts our country in jeopardy in some way, shape, or form. Or take the prosecutor and the defense out of there and let the judge hand over the caseload, 100% of the evidence, and say, okay, grand jury, let me walk you through what you should do, okay? Everything is dated in chronological order, and this is when they found 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 this, and we need you to determine whether you think that this person could be guilty based on all this evidence.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I want it to be the people.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just wonder if there shouldn't be certain qualifications. Like, you have to have finished high school or a certain, you know what I mean?
I don't think that matters if one of the two things I just said are done. Because my concern is not that they're capable investigators or that they're... Look, if you're an adult and you're brought into the jury, you are capable of making adult decisions. So either give both sides of the story, both sides of the coin here, or give no sides of the coin and let them make their decision.
But don't you think they shouldn't have, like, a criminal history? Like,
no.
You know, they shouldn't have a criminal history.
Oh, well, yeah.
Like, as, like, felons, they should,
yes.
like, be... like, at least finish normal school?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are basic minimum qualifications. Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing here is something I want to mention real quick, and then we'll move on. But, you know, I've been thinking a lot about the PCA, and ever since we talked about the 4chan theory, and this grand jury indictment, okay? And how they didn't... Basically, what we're theorizing is that they didn't want, this is the truth. This is just a fact, okay? They didn't want Bethany Funk to be, they didn't want her to testify. They didn't want her questioned.
I know.
That's why they did this.
And that's so shady.
And it's simpler, okay? It is simpler to do it this way because all the prosecution's got to do is be like, here, now give me the indictment, like, from what we're seeing.
Let me show you 30% of the case, but not the other 70%, because 30% backs my argument, this other 70 doesn't.
Honestly, from what we're hearing, that's the way I just described how grand juries work now, they just go in there to get the stamp. These 6 grand jurors were like, we need more evidence. And Bill Thompson was like, nah, give me the indictment. Yep. You have enough. Give me the indictment.
Yes.
Basically.
Yep. Gosh, I wish I was on that grand jury.
So that's really messed up.
Yeah.
But what's interesting for me is that, okay, this is done for the simplicity, so he can get this indictment and not have his evidence questioned, not have his witness questioned. And also we see in the PCA, and people have been saying, why do we not hear hardly anything about Ethan? Why?
Yeah.
Why do we not hear anything about him? Why do we not really hear as much about Xana? Like, why is it all about Kaylee and Maddie?
Yeah.
Well, I think there is a reason for that, and it has connections to Bethany. She was the one with Xana and Ethan that night.
Yeah, at Sigma Chi.
At Sigma
We've heard
Chi.
that. Yep.
They came home from what, I mean...
Together, maybe?
Maybe.
Yep.
They came home. We know there was a fight there. That's being left out intentionally.
Yes, it is.
That is totally being left out intentionally. That's why we don't know much. And there's that gap of time where they were at the Sigma Chi party and then the murders. Mm-hmm. Like, there's this huge gap of time where we don't really know what they were doing.
Yeah.
All we know is that they ordered DoorDash.
Yeah.
And we're eating food. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that really interesting, and I think that's something that I wonder if the grand juries had questions about. Like, hello, like, we need to know what happened that night with these people, because if you only look at Kaylee and Maddie, Kohberger makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Xana and Ethan and what we know now, you're like, that could be a whole nother storyline.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a whole nother investigation.
Yep.
So, I mean, did they do this to squash that side of it so that couldn't be heard because it pointed to somebody else?
It's very possible. I think that's what a lot of people theorize. And, you know, if you know us, and I'm sure if you're watching you do, everything needs to be talked about. Yeah. In my opinion, everything. And by talking about everything, you either validate or invalidate things. But the only way to know is to talk about everything. And in any criminal case where you have a defendant like this, everything should be presented.
I agree.
Yeah.
But let us know what you think. Should grand juries not be a thing anymore? Or should they just be reformed? Should the prosecution, be taken out of it? And the grand jury really be allowed to investigate and it be used the way it was intended originally. Let us know. Got any theories on it? I'm curious. But yeah, that's all for now. There's always more Idaho 4. We could probably talk about this like literally 24 hours a day.
Yes.